Breaking news. The US has just issued a safety advisory for Colombia, citing a spike in American fatalities. Is Colombia as dangerous as they say? Hi, I'm Karl Pierre, and in today's video, we're peeling back the layers of this alarming trend. We'll tackle three critical aspects: the recent surge in murders and druggings, understanding the underlying causes, and crucial considerations and strategies to keep you safe on your Colombian adventure. With a business and home in Colombia, I've been a strong advocate for relocating here, but in light of these recent developments, has my opinion changed? Stick around as we explore whether Colombia is still the vibrant, welcoming country I've known, or if it's time to reassess our safety strategies. Living globally comes with its challenges, and I'm here to help you navigate them all. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real talk on living globally the smart way. First up, let's dive into these recent reports of murders and druggings targeting Americans in Colombia. The headlines are shocking, but what's the real story behind them? We'll dissect the facts and find out just how widespread the issue is. So recently, there's been a story going around about an Asian comedian by the name of Tao Zhe-xiong. I hope I said that correctly. If I butchered his name, forgive me. But what happened with him is he was found stabbed to death, I believe, somewhere in the hills of Medellin. And it wasn't his first time traveling to Medellin. From what I gathered, he had been a frequent visitor, but he was doing what I think is the most risky thing that you could be doing in Medellin today, which is traveling for sex tourism. Yep, that is correct, sex tourism. So, of course, the issue is that in Medellin, there are a lot of attractive women. The cost for sex services is fairly low when you look at kind of the global market and landscape. And American men and men from all over the world will travel to Colombia to participate in what is legal prostitution in Colombia. And one of the things that guys will do, they'll shop around for girls on Tinder. So instead of Tinder being a traditional dating app where you are, connecting with people, going out on dates, and potentially pursuing some sort of love interest or hookup, Tinder is being used in Colombia as a kind of sex trafficking site, if you kind of want to look at it, or a sex exchange site. So this guy was going out on dates with girls that he met in Tinder, probably met in nightclubs, etc. And some of his last posts kind of show him living this lifestyle as a womanizer. And again, he's dead, and I'm sure he was respected in his community, but he wasn't what I would consider the top choice for women down there. And if you look at the pictures of the girls that he's with, these women clearly look out of his league and also look like sex workers. So he was kind of promoting himself to these women as an affluent American with means, taking multiple girls out on dates at the same time. It's just kind of a wild way of moving through life. And it caught up with him. Essentially, some girls set him up, introduced him to some gangbangers, and they did like what's called an express kidnapping, where they got you and they say, hey, look, send us X amount of dollars. And I don't know if it was because of kind of like the AI scams or him mismanaging the situation, but he wasn't able to produce the money and they killed him. The sad thing is of course, someone lost his life. But if you really look at what's happening with the druggings, with this particular example, it's mostly men that are going there for women and not really using their better judgment. If you're a guy who doesn't really get girls anywhere in the world, and you travel to a foreign country where you don't speak the language, and you're matching with all these attractive women, first of all, they're working. And second of all, with that work comes the potential for getting robbed. Like, you have rappers like Cardi B talking about how when she was a sex worker, she would go home with guys and rob them when they passed out. Like, this is something that is discussed. This is something that happens in the United States as well. So if you're already kind of in that world, you have to be on edge and you have to be a little more cautious and just thoughtful about what you're doing. My general rule of thumb is anybody that is going to Medellin or Colombia and they're thinking about hooking up with the girls, I always tell them, avoid Tinder. And if something seems too good to be true, it most likely is. And also just play it safe. You don't want to meet up with anybody that you don't know in a weird location. You don't want to follow them into their neighborhoods. You don't want to do any of those things that are going to take you out of the kind of safety zone. Also, you have to remember that as an American, things like your cell phone, your watch, your jewelry may be months literally months of salary for people living in Colombia. You really look like an opportunity for those who are going to kind of be on the borders of morality. So just take that as a warning. Like, if you're just living your day-to-day life in Colombia, you really don't have to really worry about this. This is something that is happening exclusively to tourists from America who are actively pursuing sex. This is not that it's the wild, wild west and people are just at risk all the time. Of course, there's some risk involved in living in any big city, especially where there is a wide economic gap. But guys, particularly men, you guys are going down to Colombia. I know what you're going down there for. Please stay off of Tinder. Stay out of the streetwalker situation. Stay out of the bars and nightclubs that cater to sex workers that is not kind of an official establishment for that purpose. Just stay away from it. Try to meet girls in normal places, or go to pure sex tourism establishments. They exist, and do what you need to do there. Now, you may be wondering, why is Colombia facing these safety challenges now? It's a complex mix of factors, from economic disparities to regional conflicts. Understanding these dynamics is key to grasping the current situation and how it affects locals and foreigners alike. You've got to look at Colombia over the past 50 years or so. They've had a civil war, they had a wild drug cartel issue, and because of that, there are a lot of people who are armed. There are a lot of people who have been exposed to high levels of violence, and that still kind of permeates the culture a bit. If you look at nations that haven't had such wars, they're not as violent, right? If you're a warring nation, the movement to violence happens quickly. Look at the United States, for example. We're a warring nation. Our people are heavily armed, and because of that, there are a lot of unnecessary murders, a lot of unnecessary armed crimes, and we move from silence to violence very quickly. It's pretty similar in Colombia, and the way that I look at it is, like I said, they have this history of having a civil war, a war between different political groups, the guerrillas, the traditional government, and of course the cartels that were involved in the cocaine and drug trafficking industry. Like, there was a lot of violence over the past 50 years, and it's come a long way from that. Like, it's much safer than what it was like in the 80s and 90s by everybody's accounts. But that element is still kind of there. So between having a lot of poor people, like I said, you have people who are making $250, $300 a month, living in a city where there are people who are making thousands of dollars a month. And there are visitors who are coming into that city bringing thousands of dollars with them. Like, I have guys who reach out to me sometimes and they'll be like, well, how should I prepare for Colombia? Like, can I bring my gold necklace? How should I dress? And I'm like, you don't want to be walking around with 4 years of college tuition around your neck, hanging out in Parque Lleras. You're definitely going to be targeted, because think about it. It's gold. It's easy to price, easy to sell, provides pretty good liquidity right away. That's an easy grab, whether it's a snatch and run or an armed robbery. You just don't want to do that. But you have to look at that. Like, that literally can be somebody's life-changing event. I could pay for my sister to go to college. I could pay for myself to get educated, etc. if I just grab this person's chain. If I steal 5 cell phones, that covers me for X amount of time. So this is really what's at play there. And like I said, if you're in any environment where there's this large disparity in wealth, plus this kind of history of violence, you have to move a little bit smarter, and you have to understand that there's going to be risk involved there. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, is it really worth it to put yourself at that level of risk? And I would say, look, if you can just assume a regular lifestyle, not really draw that much attention to yourself, stay off the dating apps, you, for the most part, can avoid violence or being the victim of a crime. These rules apply to every major city in the world as far as I'm concerned. I know there's some very low crime cities in like the Scandinavian areas, but in most developed cities where there's a large, dense population, you need to move a little bit differently. Just because you're on vacation in a city doesn't mean that you're in a tourist town that's highly protected. Medellin is not a tourist town. It's become a major tourist destination, but it's not Cancun where everything's a resort. No, you're in the thick of it. So the most important thing that we need to discuss is, how can you reduce your risk of becoming a victim in Colombia? I'll share with you some essential safety tips and local insights to help you navigate Colombia confidently and securely. As I mentioned before, the first thing that you want to do if you're going there as a tourist and you're going there to hook up, stay off of Tinder. There are plenty of establishments that will cater to the gentleman experience without having to deal with any risk. If you go to a strip club in the United States, for example, you don't really have to worry about a stripper robbing you, right? They're working there, they're part of that establishment, they're part of that culture. You can rest assured that you're in that establishment, you're safe. But if you go to a seedy part of town where there's street walkers, for example, or street workers, you're at risk of getting robbed by drug dealers, you're at risk of getting robbed by the workers. Like, you just have to use that better judgment. So generally speaking, as a man, stay off the dating apps. If you want to meet women, like I said, there are establishments that you could go to. I'm sure if you Google them, you will find them. Or if you go to YouTube, there's going to be some guy out there talking about it. Go there, keep it safe. If you're really looking for romance, I would encourage you to do what people have been doing for years. I'm not an advocate on dating sites whatsoever. I don't like them. I like meeting people organically, and I think that gives you an opportunity to see them for who they are in like natural settings. Universities, workplace, meetups, social events that are maybe professional and business oriented, language exchange, communities. There are plenty of people who are not workers who are interested in enriching themselves by going to school or by going to work and just leading and living normal lives, that if you just put yourself in those environments, then you'll meet normal people. And of course, it's going to help you to speak the local language. It's going to be hard to meet a traditional Colombian partner if you don't speak the common tongue, right? You need to speak the language a little bit. So just kind of keep those things in mind when you're thinking about meeting people. Another rule of thumb is don't be out late alone and don't flash your wealth. Like I said before, the things that you own that might just be kind of luxury items or vanity items, for people who are in Colombia that are thieves, those things are equivalent to months, if not a year's worth of salary, depending on how lavishly you're living. So you don't want to flash your latest watch. You don't want to kind of draw attention to your neckline with diamond and gold jewelry. You don't want to wear high-end designer clothing. You don't want to even really look too much like a stylized American. Don't come with a baseball cap. Don't come looking like someone who came out of a magazine, right? You just don't want to be that person. And for the women who are watching, I think that the same rules apply. You don't want to kind of be a sucker that is going to get robbed, right? Like, women aren't necessarily that flashy with jewelry as some men may be, but still they may wear a gold necklace. They may have a large engagement ring or something along those lines. You don't want to walk around with a 3-carat diamond engagement ring alone at night in Colombia. That's just a really bad idea. Again, that might be a $30,000 ring. Somebody robs you for that. It's a life-changing experience. You do want to be inside the tourist zones because those tourist zones are typically a little more safer, more police presence, etc. You don't want to be on the unbeaten path, kind of like in a low-income residential area. So typically when people do visit Colombia, they are going to Poblado, Parque Lleras area. And of course, it's going to attract, just like Times Square in New York City will attract some odd characters. Being the center or the focal point of tourism is gonna attract that, but generally speaking, it's a little more police, a little more safe, a lot of amenities that you would enjoy as a tourist. Laureles as well, but even Laureles is kind of half sketchy, right? It kind of borders some neighborhoods that may be home to criminals. So, when I look at where I would be, I tend to stay in the Poblado area. Laureles, I would go out for dinner, maybe drinks. Envigado is more of like a family-oriented area. Sabaneta as well. Belén as well. Those are going to be more kind of middle-class to upper-middle-class neighborhoods where there's going to be less of that element that you need to be fearful of. Certainly don't walk around late alone at night. Don't walk the streets intoxicated. Try to have your wits with you at all times. These are tips that I would advise to anybody going to any major city. Actually, the last time that I was in Palermo, I stayed kind of in a sketchy part of the historic center where people were shooting up heroin right on an abandoned school site. Literally, I parked my car and I was like, okay, I'm in the thick of the drug zone, I need to be mindful. I can't leave stuff in the car, make sure there's no change, no cash in the car. I'm not going to the car past like 7 p.m. I'm not going to be out there at 2 a.m. because people are going to be high and they're going to be desperate. So you just have to assess those sort of things and just move a little wisely. Don't intoxicate yourself. Don't hang out with sketchy people. Avoid being alone and don't draw unnecessary attention to yourself. If you follow these rules, you should be a-okay and you could continue to enjoy visiting or potentially relocating to Medellin. If you're considering a move to Colombia or just planning a visit and you're still concerned, just feel free to reach out to me and my team at Colombia@entplife.com for personalized advice and assistance with where you should go, the visa process, and maybe any other experience that you should be pursuing and you should be enjoying. If you want to learn a little bit more about what else Colombia has to offer, check out our next video right here, where expats share why, despite challenges, Colombia remains a top destination for those leaving the US. Stay informed, stay safe, and keep exploring life globally.